Hi, everyone. Welcome to Six Figure Authors, the show that helps you take your writing career to the next level. I'm Andrea Pearson, and I'm here with my two co-hosts.
I'm Joe Lalo.
And I'm Lindsay Baroker.
And we've got a guest for today's episode. His name is, and I bet nobody in our audience knows who he is. His name is Mark Leslie Lefebvre. He's a horror author, publishing consultant, and the former director of author relations at Kobo. And he's the current, and Mark, you can tell me if this is wrong, director of business development at Distributor.
That is my title. Thank you.
Awesome. Mark is also a podcaster. He runs the Stark Reflections podcast for authors. He's got a ton of experience in the book business, and he's seen a lot of data flowing through Distributor and Kobo. So we're going to be asking him a bunch of questions about best practices he's seen and things that work on other retailers, et cetera. And then we'll also get an update on new features that you might want to take advantage at Distributor. And yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Oh, this is episode 13, and we are recording in 2019, November, for those who are listening in the future.
Lucky 13.
Lucky 13. Yeah, I don't think we have any updates this week that are pertinent to share, though. Actually, Mark, if it's okay, is there anything that you're working on currently, since we usually give updates at this point?
Yeah, I am actually working on a book in my, what am I calling it? The Stark Publishing Solutions imprint. I did Killing It on Kobo and 7 Ps of Publishing Success, and I had to, because of the popularity of a couple of podcast episodes, I had to put it into a book, An Author's Guide to Working with Bookstores and Libraries. And that's actually because I like a tight deadline. The deadline to have that out is actually, it's up for pre-order for December 10th, 2019. So I better damn well finish it.
Have you started writing it then?
Oh God, yeah. I'm about 75% of the way through. I've even already had early readers of it before it's done. So
awesome.
It's one of those nano kind of projects. And I was like, let's do something really practical.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
That'll probably be in the story bundle for next year, I'm assuming.
Oh, I'm assuming, yeah.
Okay. Speaking of which, that story bundle is still live, storybundle.com/nano. Mark and I are both in that, and then a bunch of other authors who are really cool too. And anyway, so let's go ahead and jump right into the questions, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
I'm getting nods.
Can I just say I feel like I'm a little bit of a poser here because I am not a 6-figure author. I'm only a 5-figure author. But I'm honored that I get to be included in this podcast. So thank you guys very much.
5-figure author is still absolutely fantastic. Most of my clients are like 1-figure authors.
Okay, well, for now.
It's true. That's why I work with them. Anyway. Okay. So, all right. Would you go ahead and tell us your history with writing books and authors? You used to run a bookshop, right?
Yeah, I've been in the book industry since 1992. So I started as a part-time bookseller in Ottawa, Ontario, sort of Christmas help. I got bitten by the book bug. That was the same year my very first short story appeared in a small press magazine. So, and then shortly after I received honorable mention in the year's best fantasy and horror, which was again for horror stuff that Ellen Datlow was the editor of that. And so I started in, prior to the internet. So a lot of the stuff that I was doing was the old method, or the old solution was you've got to sell some short stories to a market and then build a name for yourself. And then maybe you'll be lucky enough that an agent or an editor may take interest in you. But I got to a point where I had sold dozens and dozens of stories, and either I got payment in copy or $5, or then I was starting to work my way up to 5 to 6 cents a word, which is professional rates for stories. And I was working in bookstores my entire time. I moved around bookstore to bookstore to bookstore. And it was in 2004, I got people would say, so you're a writer? And I would say, yeah, I'm a writer. And I'm working in a bookstore. I'd say, well, where's your book? Do you have any books? Can I read them? And I went, yeah. So you got to get into a car and you got to drive 6 or 7 or 8 hours across the border into Michigan. And if you get over there before the end of the month, you will find the magazine I'm in, circulation 500 copies, but you better get there soon. And that was, I got tired of that because no one's ever going to do that. So I actually, in 2004, I self-published before self-publishing was kosher. Back when you would be as willing to admit that you masturbate as you would be to self-publishing. It was like an icky, dirty thing. And so I used Ingram Lightning Source. It was kind of like Ingram Spark is like the Fisher Price version of the print on there. Like, it's prettier and easier to use, and there's less buttons. And so I used Ingram Spark to self-publish a book called One Hand Screaming, which was self-published, but I also felt justified in this vanity publishing project because 80% of the stories had already been selected out of a slush pile, had already been edited. So I already had that, that stamp of approval that we so long to have from traditional publishing, even if we are successful 6-figure or 5-figure authors. And so I got into self-publishing in 2004. That kind of led to continued career in book selling, that led to running a print-on-demand machine in a university bookstore that I managed. And that's when I got involved. I was early into Kindle and early into Smashwords, which were the two main sort of places. Couldn't get in directly to Kobo without pulling your eyes out. I was in Google in the early days too. And then I ended up getting hired by Kobo to come up with a solution for self-publishing authors. Like, how are we going to make it easier for them? And that was Kobo Writing Life, which is, my baby. I'm still very proud of them. I'm very proud of the amazing people who work at Kobo. And obviously have a huge passion for that. And then I guess lately I've sort of migrated away from that because I kind of did what I needed to do at Kobo. 1 in every 4 books that sold at Kobo was coming from Kobo Writing Life. That doesn't include Smashwords and Draft to Digital and Publish Drive and StreetLib and all of the hundreds of other aggregators. So if you actually took into account all of the self-published books, I'm willing to bet that 1 in every 3 books it sells on Kobo is a self-published title, which is pretty significant. And so you have to think that the stats are probably the same on Amazon and on Apple and Nook and stuff like that, because really good content is really good content no matter where it comes from. And then I got the opportunity. I tried to be independent for a long time, or for at least a year. I made it almost a full year. And I bumped into, I was talking to the guys from Draft to Digital, who I'd always loved and respected. Heck, I was using Draft to Digital to convert my books for free even when I worked at Kobo, because it was better than Kobo's conversion tool. So I agreed to come on board because I kind of thought, now I can help people beyond Kobo, not just because it's great. I love Kobo, but I wanted people to be successful everywhere. And what I love about Draft to Digital, and what I love about what I get to do with Dan and Kevin and the other folks that you probably know publicly, is I get to work on these really cool things and see what we can do to help authors. So that's kind of my, I would call it my Cliff's Notes version for American folks. It's Coles in Canada. For any Canadian listeners, it's the Coles Notes version, or to the Reader's Digest version, which we all know.
Or if you were poor in college, it was Spark Notes.
Or just Spark. Oh yeah, Cliff Notes is the UK and Spark Notes is the US, right?
Well, there's Cliff Notes here too, but Spark Notes is like the one you could get online for free.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah. So you've been in the publishing industry in a number of capacities for a long time. And by now we've made it pretty clear on the show that to be a successful indie author, you've got to have a good mind for business. Do you feel that there is anything about the book industry that makes it distinct from other businesses, or do all the same rules apply?
I mean, business is business, right? And I think one of the things we forget, we know when we're passionate about the stories we tell, and we know that we have the power to push those buttons, but I think we often forget. We often forget about the importance of business, and remembering that as passionate as we are as storytellers, you have to remember that every other player in this is treating it like a business. So Amazon is treating it like a business, and Kobo is, and Apple and Nook and all the other players. And when you're cultivating relationships, I 20 books to 50K, I introduced Robin Cutler from Ingram Spark to Robert Slater, who's an author I met when I was at Kobo. I met him in a Village Books, an independent bookstore in Washington State. And it was an amazing thing that Robert reminded me of what the bookstore said. The bookstore said, "You're the first person who's ever approached us and asked what you can do for us rather than what we can do for them, for you." And they are hugely supportive of everything he does. Now, because through Kobo, they can sell his ebooks on the website, but they also carry his, it would have been Create Space books or non-returnable POD titles, because he has that relationship. So I think the thing we tend to forget in an algorithm-based world, and Amazon is the world's biggest player, and the algorithm rules, or as I like to say, the inmates run the asylum, but we forget the relationships. And I'm constantly reminded of that, because the reason I go to a conference like 20 books to 50K, or Andrea and I were at the WMG Business Masterclass also in Vegas a few weeks earlier, So wait, and Joe and Lindsay and I were at NINC, and so we were all together somewhere recently. But one of the main reasons we do that isn't necessarily for the learning, which is fantastic. It's for this relationships that we have with other authors and relationships we have with, with BookFunnel and with the various retailers and with the various players in the industry. And we get to talk to Dave Chesson one-on-one and pick his brain or not only, drink with David Gaughran, but learn from him at the same time too. So I think I probably got sidetracked from that, but I think if I maybe accidentally answered your question somewhere in that rambling, I think it's the relationships that we lose sight of.
Yeah, that's about what I was looking for.
Thanks, Joe.
So what you're doing is telling all the introverts listening that they need to get out and network with other people.
And that's really hard because, Lindsay, I mean, we talk about this because I am actually, when I walk into a room, I will run to the corner and I will not go approach people. I hope people approach me. Thank God lots of people do because I'm giant and you can't miss me. The big bald head shining in the back of the room. And that's even what I did at 20 Books. I mean, unless I really knew someone and say, oh my God, I haven't seen you in a while. I mostly just come in and shuffle off to the corner and hope that someone comes and says hi. But I recognize that's hard. But you don't have to have an in-person relationship. It's about the things that you tweet, or it's about the things that you post and how you treat other people with respect. Right. I think that goes a really, really long way. When I see an author helping other authors, I want to help that author. And I've always had that as a bookseller. The minute I see people being compassionate and willing to pay it forward and spread the love for their fellow person in the community, I want to help that author. And I know that that's a pervasive element that, kind of sticks through. If I could speak on behalf of those on the curatorial side of things, the librarians, the booksellers, the retailers, because I mean, apart from Amazon, everyone else is doing manual merchandising. Apple's doing it, Nook is doing it, Kobo's doing it, Google, who are coming in January, and I'm so excited they're actually going to be doing stuff. And Lindsay, I'm not sure if you had a chance to chat with the Google people, but I'm excited about what they're going to be doing.
Yeah, I actually did. And we're recording you because of the Thanksgiving stuff coming up before we do our 20 Books kind of roundup. And I do have some notes from, they had two girls and two guys at the conference. And I have some notes about what's going on with Google Play. So a little teaser for next week, guys.
It's a great teaser. I can't wait to listen to it. Can I listen to it now?
Well, as soon as we record it.
If I'm in the future, I could listen to that one before I listen to this one.
You'll have to talk to the sci-fi people out there. We're going to have to be bending some time. So I am curious, as as Drafted Digital guy and Kobo guy previously, you have, of course, need to tell authors, well, not need to tell, but you probably feel that you should tell authors to go wide in all the bookstores, not to have their eggs all in one basket. And from a business sense, it makes sense to not rely completely on one retailer. But I have to ask you, the author, I think you've mentioned that you've at least played with KDP Select before. So what are you doing with your own stuff?
Yeah, first I'm going to say that I actually think every single author and every single book every author releases, every series has its own answer and its own solution that's unique. And I often, because I do independent consulting still as well, because I'm technically part-time with Drafted Digital, I actually look at the author and work with them, and Amazon's the best place to start because it's the biggest bookstore. So even though I am partial to wide, I understand how people can make a lot of money. When I was sitting in the Kobo office creating, or I think I just launched Kobo Writing Life, or was in the process of launch, I can't remember where in the history it was, I got the notification, because I've been a Kindle direct publishing author forever. When I got the notification that they were doing KDP Select, within 3 hours of the announcement, I had a book in KDP Select, and I have had it there ever since. I have also launched books into KDP Select, and I still have a number of titles there. And here's why. Any new thing that comes out, I want to try it. I want to test it. I'm very eager about it. And I honestly believe, and it's something that I taught my son. He's 15 years old now, but don't tell me you don't like a food unless you have actually tasted it. And I'm not saying I don't like KDP Select. I don't like any company that forces you to be exclusive. I've long argued that you can't call yourself an independent author you're a corporate author if you're giving your rights over to wholeheartedly, the same way you would be giving your rights to a single publisher. And I say that jokingly, but I've always had a book in KDP Select, and I don't like the idea of exclusivity, but I need to understand it. I need to play in it. I need to try to make it work. I need to understand, because if I'm going to talk to authors about it, I can't just be well, this rock music is all about sex and drugs and rock and roll and that Elvis shaking his hips. Like, I don't want to be the person who doesn't understand and talks against it. I want to be the person who understands and helps an author figure out what's right for them. And I love that about the D2D mentality, is because at D2D, we're not forcing people to have to publish through D2D. We're not forcing people that you have to be wide. We're talking to people, and we're helping them figure out what's best for them. And it's kind of like, hey, we got this stuff over here. Even if you are exclusive, we got some free tools. Use them. Go for it. They're there, right? Yeah, and we understand that you may use us. That's fine. But maybe one day when, if you want to go wide, you've tried our stuff out and it should sell itself. I shouldn't have to sell it. So yeah, I probably always will have at least one title. Not that I play in the system very often. I'll run some promos and I'll run, oh yeah, I should do a free thing. Like, it's not that I've been very strategic about it, but I've always wanted to be in a program just so I can understand it. Because how could I help authors and talk about it without ever having played in that area? Which I think it's an important distinction. It's something I was always proud of as the head of Kobo Writing Life, and something I'm proud of at Draft to Digital is, Kevin Tumlinson and I are authors. We're not only talking to authors about how to use the system, we're using it too. And so our vested interest is, how can this tool be better for us? And so I've always believed that that's been a benefit to understanding it from the inside, rather than just a corporate talking head who comes in and says cool things. And, for years, not to badmouth, because I adore what Amazon has done for authors. But one of the things that I think has been a distinction is, when I was on a panel with a bunch of people who were running these platforms, I was the only one who had used them all. So I always thought, I was always proud of that distinction. And I want to continue to be somebody who's not just working in the industry, but somebody who's working within the industry as an author. And to me, that makes a difference. But I'm a little biased. I kind of like me.
That's awesome. So Lindsay's comment is, Mark is a corporate spy.
Apparently I am. I'm spying on this podcast for my own means.
And actually, you're more compassionate about the reasons you're in Kindle Unlimited. I'm in Kindle Unlimited because of selfish reasons. I'm like, it's the second largest retailer in the world, and those readers.
What do you mean second largest reader?
Just the studies that I've read. Like, I don't remember. Do you guys, Lindsay or Joe, remember who said it? But like, readers in Kindle Unlimited don't shop and they don't buy elsewhere, and so you won't ever get them to download anywhere else. And so,
right.
Lindsay, do you remember?
I don't remember. I know Nick Webb had mentioned that on our old show, that Amazon's the biggest retailer, and then KU's like the second biggest retailer. You could kind of argue it that way. So understandable.
That makes sense.
Okay, so you mentioned that sometimes you do recommend authors go into Kindle Unlimited. I mean, what circumstances would it be appropriate for a new or even an experienced author to use Kindle Unlimited? And you probably wouldn't ever recommend them be all in, or would you? I mean, what are
okay. I mean, a lot of authors are starting off with one title, right? And to be quite honest, there's a lot to learn. It's so overwhelming. So why not learn the biggest bookstore in the world? If you're going to learn one, learn the biggest bookstore. And I was talking to Rachel Amphlett earlier today, and she reminded me she actually broke out on Kobo first. I mean, Amazon is still her biggest retailer, but Kobo was where she took off. Because I remember calling her going, Rachel, what did you do? Hi, I'm Mark, by the way. Rachel, what did you do? Because your sales took off, and I don't know what you did, because I want to help other people do what you did. And she's like, I have no idea. My books took off. So it can happen on any retailer. But pick one. And why not pick the biggest one? And why not pick the one that, I mean, every podcast and book in the world talks about Amazon. It's why I wrote the book on Kobo, because there's very few resources outside of that. So I often think that it's a good place to start, especially when it's only 90 days. you start off, you try it out, and if it works for you and you're making a ton of money, great. See how you can keep doing that. But if you're not making a ton of money especially from the Kindle Unlimited aspect of things, maybe it's time to branch out. And even some of my clients that I work with, we said, well, let's start in exclusive and see what we can do, leverage the things we can, because we don't have to worry about, I mean, when you're thinking about Kindle, you're only really worrying about the US and the UK for the most part. It's when you move to Apple and Kobo that you have to worry about. Yeah, I mean, Nook is only US too, but then you have to think about international audiences. So, yeah, but I think even an experienced author, if it's working for you, why would you change it? And why would I fight with you about that? Except for the fact that all eggs in one basket and stuff like that. I mean, I was at Kobo when Kobo turned off every single independent author after I'd spent 6 months gaining everyone's trust in me. I had to shut everyone down for 24 hours. I've seen it happen from the inside of a retailer, and I've seen the business reasons why it had to happen. That scares me, knowing that anyone can shut anything off at any time. So that's where diversification of income comes in handy. And Andrea, you and I saw a lot of that at the WMG Masterclass, is the idea of multiple streams of income so that you're not dependent on one source. I think Joanna Penn says it really, really well when she talked about not wanting to be beholden to a single corporation when she was working that corporate job as an IT person. And I kind of take that to heart as well when I think about the possibility. But again, it's working for now, and so why not leverage it to help an author out? That's a really long. So I go on way too long with my answers. I'm sorry. I must like the sound of my own voice or something.
No, and like you say, for the same reasons that I do. Like I owe my continued solvency in this business because I had a fairly wide stance and could absorb a lot of mistakes in individual places. But so it's fairly common for authors to shift their availability at some point in the book's life, either starting off wide and then going exclusive, or vice versa. Let's say for those two, what is the ideal method to do this? Like, if you're going to start one way and change.
I would start narrow and go wide. And one of the main reasons is as much as I love Kobo, they're the cause of a lot of the problems, because when you publish to Kobo, you're not just publishing to their availability in 130 countries, but you're publishing to the available 170 countries because of their retail partners. And that's a downstream communication between Kobo and Fnac, or Kobo. And Fnac is one of the guilty players that is really slow to remove titles. So if you go wide, it's really hard to get everything pulled back. Kobo will help you, and they're amazing people, but it's not easy. It's easier to start narrow and then go wide. The other reason about pulling back and then going in and out, I'd recommend, Mama's got a squeeze box she wears on her chest. That she goes in and out, the Who. Come on, I'm a big music fan. But you can't go in and out because then every time you pull back, you're starting completely from scratch. And it takes a long time on other retailers. I mean, I would say to an author, it would take a minimum of 9 months to make really good traction on Kobo. 9 months is 3 tours of duty in Kindle Direct Publishing Select, right? KDP Select. That's really hard for an author, especially when they go from having extra income from Kindle Unlimited page reads, and they're seeing a drop in the income and not seeing the return on the other platforms. And so what I saw a lot of is they pull back out again and they try it again. They go, oh, look, I'm making more money on Kindle. Oh, I'm going to try it again. But they only try for 30 days. And it's this self-fulfilling prophecy. So I advise starting narrow and going wide, not starting wide and going narrow.
Yeah, I've talked about often on here how I launch new series into Kindle Unlimited, and I leave them there as long as I'm working on that series, because it's just easier to get visibility on there right now, and then go wide. And I feel like a lot of authors, they don't want to be exclusive to Amazon. They just feel kind of stuck in the system because they do so much better when they're in KU as well. Right. But for those who do want to go wide, maybe they're working on a new series and it's inevitable that the older one is not getting as many page reads anymore. What would you say the best practices are, other than committing? Like, just decide when you're going to go wide, stay wide with that series.
So I think a thing that's important to remember is be fair to all your readers and all your customers. And you're going to have people who are Kindle Unlimited only readers. As you guys said, it's the second biggest bookstore is Kindle Unlimited. So when people get mad that you're not in Kindle Unlimited anymore, because, hey, I'm never going to buy your books. I want to read them all for free. And I use free in quotes because it's not actually free. But same thing with libraries. They're free, but they're not actually free. Although they're a lot more free because of the, you're not taking $15 out of my pocket every month. It's spread out over lots of people. You're going from only select people who are privileged get access to my book for free, and anyone can get my book for free because it's available through the libraries. That's a critical thing to remember. So I think that's an important thing, because you don't want to shortchange your Kindle Unlimited. The people you train to read your books for free, you want to make sure they still know they can get your books for free, but that you're letting more people get it for free. So that's an important distinction. The other thing I think is thinking about the global nature, and also thinking that a lot of systems are a combination of algorithm and manual curation. And so with Draft to Digital, we do a lot of promotions with Kobo, with Apple, and with Overdrive, and soon to come Hoopla, where we try to promote our authors and get them placement. And the first thing Apple will do, and I know Kobo did it because I was there, Apple is just a lot more clear about it, is, if I suggest an author, I'd suggest a title and an author for a promo for them. We nominate a bunch of titles. Let's say we nominate 50 or 100, and maybe they pick 5. They'll look at them and see if the author on their website is actually inclusive of all retailers. And inclusive may mean having the up-to-date Apple Books logo, not iBooks, but the up-to-date logo of the retail. And Kobo's changed their logo 50 times when I was there as well. The up-to-date logo, as well as actually having links, or a universal book link, or some like books2read.com universal book link from Draft to Digital, end of ad, or any other universal link that is inclusive. And I know there's other tools out there. So they look for those things. I used to, just an insight from when I was at Kobo, I would get angry emails from authors all the time saying, damn you, I published mine to your platform and you've done SFA to help me out. And I would look at the signature in their email and I'd say, go buy my book on Amazon. And there'd be a link to Amazon in their email. And I was like, I want to help you, but you're not helping yourself. And you're not actually helping your cause when you're pointing all traffic to one direction and you're wondering why there's no traffic there. I mean, it's everybody's responsibility, not just the retailers. So I think that's part of it. I think when you're dependent upon learning the complicated and constantly changing algorithms of Amazon, remembering that there's other challenges in the world, that there are more, what did Hamlet say to Horatio? There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of, and the philosophies on this shores of this big river. He said something like that, didn't he?
I think it's heaven and hell. I don't know. You're talking to sci-fi fantasy people. We don't read those classics.
Well, there was a ghost in Hamlet. That was a sort of a fantasy element.
That's awesome. So is there anything authors shouldn't do when going wide, besides, pulling in and out fast?
Something they shouldn't. Yeah, pulling in and out fast is a thing, because it's not going to do you any favors. What shouldn't they do? I think they also shouldn't just focus on reviews on Amazon or ranking on Amazon. And here's something. I've always said an important element for an author is to define yourself as a big fish in a small pool. I'll use a physical example. One day I outsold Stephen King, not on Amazon. I outsold Stephen King at a Costco in Sudbury, Ontario, because Dr. Sleep and my book Spooky Sudbury were beside each other. And I happened to be in the bookstore doing a book signing, and I took a picture at the beginning of the day. And at the end of the day, and my skid went down half and his barely moved. Now, that's a funny thing to think about. But if I were to define myself as a guy who writes ghost stories against Stephen King, I would never win. But if I were to define myself as a big fish in a small pool, in Sudbury that day, I was the best-selling horror author. And I even beat Stephen King for physical books for a couple hours. And that was it. So I think the other thing to remember is, yeah, I'm number whatever on Amazon, and you're so excited about your Amazon ranking. You have an Apple ranking, you have a Nook ranking, you have a Kobo ranking. And let's be honest, there's less people playing in those platforms. Your chances of hitting number one are way easier. So you can be a number one best-selling Kobo author for selling 5 books in the US today. come on, doesn't anyone want to be a number one best-selling author?
Yeah, I still do. I keep a folder that is called Proof of Awesome, and so I screen print any significant achievement that my book has had, and it's like,
Okay. That's a coffee table book I will buy, Joe.
But all right, so changing topic a little bit, none of us are strangers to jumping genres on this. I think we all have a fair amount of genre spread, but you've got a bigger one than many of us because you've got nonfiction of like two different varieties. You've got novels and you've got collections. So do you find that the different genres present significant differences in the challenges of selling them?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually think that in with my Mark Leslie name, I'm not even going into the nonfiction businesses of publishing books that I do, but the Mark Leslie name, I do horror, and I call it Twilight Zone / Black Mirror kind of spec fic, because it's not sci-fi and it's not really fantasy, unless you call it urban fantasy. But then I have the true ghost stories, and I find that I get a lot of people who find my print books, which are traditionally published, and I say print books and traditionally published because I make very little money off the ebooks from traditionally published because they're overpriced and it's a ripoff. But the print books are $25, and I may not make a lot of money off of those royalties, but I do get a lot of readers who found me that way and then go, oh, he's got some short story collections. Oh, he's got some novels that are eerie or strange. And so I think I probably have more people discover, and maybe because the majority of readers are still reading print. I know we're all ebook people, but in the majority of readers, not the majority of sales indie authors get, but the majority of readers in the world, if you ask the average American, have you read a book since high school? 1 in 4 will have said something like that. It's very, very small. But of the people who have read a book, and when you're not at a writer's conference and you go to an airport or stuff like that, and you ask the average person who says they read, most of them will have never read an ebook. So 60 to 70% of the reading population is still discovering print books. They may be buying the print books on Amazon, but they're reading print books. And we forget that because the majority of our income is indie authors. And the same thing for me. The majority of my income as an indie author comes from ebooks. And so I think I have an aid in discoverability of people who find me because my book is in a store. I was excited. I was in Vegas last week to go see a couple friends of mine Aaron Michael Ritchie and DJ Butler were doing a book signing at a Barnes & Noble, and I went to support them. And I was checking out local Las Vegas ghost story books because I'm always researching. And I found Haunted Hospitals, one of my books, on the shelf. And it's like, whoa, cool. It very rarely do I see that. I saw that in St. Pete, Florida, but Sarah Rosen, independent author, available through Ingram Spark. She had 3 of her books were on the shelf in that independent bookstore, which is like amazing because mine were traditionally published, so they were available through easier channels. Hers weren't. And I still think that there's discoverability that can happen in that environment that no Amazon marketing ad or BookBub is going to help with, because there's still a lot of people reading print. So I think I get more discoverability from print to ebook than I get from ebook to print, if that means anything.
Well, before we move on to our next question, Mark was correct. More things in heaven and earth, Horatio. I'm always impressed with people who can just bust out quotes from literature. Like, I read that book in high school. But
Hamlet is my favorite play, and I taught drama, so I always started with that quote from Hamlet.
All right, I've only got like 2 quotes that I can, like, in my whole brain that I can remember, and they're very short.
Mine are all Monty Python quotes, by the way. I can do that one way better than Shakespeare.
Oh, I can do Shrek pretty good. We were talking about Shrek before the show. That's my literary influence right there. All right, so you mentioned a couple times that outside of Amazon, a lot of the retailers have people merchandising and choosing things that they're going to maybe promote. What can authors who don't have a relationship yet with these guys, like, how can they get noticed and hopefully included in some of those promotions?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, if you're publishing direct, there's ways to go through Kobo Writing Life to get promotions. There's ways to go through Nook directly. And Apple, what I like about Apple is they don't care if you're direct or not. They're just looking for good stuff. I know it's hard because I met a bunch of people at conferences in the last few months, and half the time I say, let me know about your new books. And at Draft to Digital, we've done it manually. Dan was doing it very manually himself through email. I came on board and said, dude, you're killing yourself. This is way too much work. Let's make some forms. And based on the success of the forms we've been using, we're now able to show the dev team it's worth doing the effort to build those right into the dashboard. So very soon we'll have a dashboard where you'd be able to prompt yourself for, hey, I write this kind of stuff. Or if, for example, we just did a Kobo holiday romance promo, and I was talking to people in the last couple of conferences and say, if you're publishing the Kobo through us, here's a link, go fill out the form and tell us about your book so we can collect them and then mail them off to Kobo and hope they pick some of them. And but soon we'll be able to build that right in. But I think looking, how everyone looks at Amazon and you go and look to see what's trending and you look to see what's whatever. I think it's important to understand comp titles and understand your target audience from the point of view of the reader. And David Goguen talks about this brilliantly in the reader journey. But who are you satisfying with your book? Who does it appeal to? And if you can understand who your comp titles and authors are, and what value you bring, or what Venn diagram of this meets that, I think is critical to understand before you even talk to anyone. And that goes way back to the beginning, even with clients I work with, is, dude, don't spend any marketing money because you don't know who your audience is yet. And you guys know this because, and I'm sure most of your listeners know this because they're smart, because they're listening to this podcast. But it's a fundamental thing we sometimes forget. We forget. It's like, oh my God. I mean, for years, I've been in the book business since 1992. For years, I was marketing a book to the wrong audience. And I didn't realize till I got a 1-star review that when I read it, I went, oh yeah, you're right. These aren't scary. These are dark humor. Huh. How did I miss that? I'm supposed to be smart. I'm supposed to know this industry, right? So we even though we know the big things, we sometimes forget the little things. And sometimes the little things are, whoops, target audience is over there, not here. And that's why that book's not moving.
So that's actually a really good point. It's true. I mean, a lot of the times authors, they'll market a book according to the genre they think it is rather than the genre it really is. And if you're not getting enough downloads because people aren't being reached who would actually read it, then you're not going to know from reviews that you're targeting the wrong audience. So it's kind of it's hard to juggle,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So what sort of bad expectations do authors have sometimes when they're working with or promoting on other retailers?
I think the expectations that they have is that their sales are going to be anywhere near what Amazon's are. Now, there are exceptions. There are authors I know who are, Google is their number one platform, or Nook or Kobo is their number one platform, or Apple. And every title is different. Every experience is different. Like I said, Rachel and Flip broke out on Kobo first. But I think I've always looked at it from the point of view of, if you sold a book on Kobo, chances are you sold 10 times as many on Amazon. So you have to compare apples to apples. You have to think about, Kobo is a great retailer in Canada, but the population of Canada is the size of the state of California. So being number one in Canada is still a significant less of a volume than the entire United States of America. So that's where, looking at global markets, I'm really excited to see what happens with, emerging markets that are a lot more print centric than America is, and the UK and places like that. So there's that element, and I think I lost my train of thought. That's what I think.
And I was actually just going to say, authors, I mean, it's the long game. It's not just how much can you make in 1 month. It's how much can you make in the long haul.
Right.
In some months, my other retailers will get 50 to 75% of Amazon's downloads for me, but they're not all from one spot. It's all combined, and so
Yeah.
I think that's important for authors to remember too.
Actually, and you raise a good point, Andrew, and you reminded me that the majority of your sales from Amazon are probably coming from the US and the UK. And the majority of your sales from Kobo are probably higher if you just compared Canada or Australia or, the Netherlands or something like that. So I think that's important. The other thing that I still think we forget about as authors is, and I know it's stuff we all know, but an ebook doesn't have to be 300 pages bound between two pieces of cloth, which is the traditional publishing's novel. And you guys know this, but we forget it because you guys know it so well. And we forget to remind new people coming to the industry that there is no standard format of size of book. We have an amazing opportunity to experiment and do bold, exciting things. And I know there's serialization and, maybe it's 15,000 word, fast release and stuff like that. We even the early experimenters, sometimes they were experimenting too early and the world wasn't ready for them. So that's sometimes a problem. It's like, yeah, I did that 10 years ago. Yeah, well, Stephen King tried to launch an ebook in 1999 when I was a bookseller. I was all over it like a cheap suit. But even Stephen King couldn't sell an ebook in 1999. So even the people at the top of their game, if they're too early, they may not make it. So it's kind of like, it's that patience and persistence thing that I like to talk about is, yeah, give it another shot. Maybe the world wasn't ready for this.
Yeah, I watch a lot of math YouTube stuff, and every now and then you'll see like, oh, this was considered to be an unsolvable problem because you'd have to do like 2 million calculations to solve it, and then computers came along, and well, we can do this every day of the week. So, all right, so it's fair to say a lot of people go to Amazon exclusively because Amazon's the biggest earner, and they feel like it's a very attractive basket to put all of their eggs in. Chances are, if you're wide, you're still going to be seeing just a couple of the storefronts make up the lion's share of your income. Should it be a goal to build your entire platform, or is focusing on the heavy hitters going to have the bigger payback?
I think you always have to remember the importance of how much time do you have to spend and where is it wisely spent. We know that it's more wisely spent on focusing on your readers and providing them more. I'm not saying killing yourself and publishing 1,000 books a year, but I'm saying you are better off working on the next book. I say this as a complete idiot who doesn't do it himself. It's like physician, heal thyself. But I know I would do way better on my fiction novels if I actually finished a bloody sequel. God, I know that. I tell everyone to do that, but I don't do it myself. So doesn't mean just because I'm giving out advice doesn't mean I actually listen to myself. But I think it's important to remember is like, yeah, I can focus on, and maybe you do it one at a time, the same way you approach social media. If you're not comfortable with a certain thing, then don't waste your time on it, because if you can't do it authentically, it's not going to feel good to you. And the same thing for, you could try this marketing on this particular retail and see what happens. So for example, I'm going to put my stuff in a Kobo promo and I get rejected, so I try again. Or I'm going to try to do this BookBub ad, or I'm going to try to get this sort of deal, or I'm going to try to push this, or I'm going to try to submit for that. It's always good to try new things, but I think we can sometimes fall into the case of, I'm going to promote the heck out of this one thing I have and lose sight of the fact that I could have been working on another product, or I could have been working on a something just for my readers, my people, an exclusive piece of content I'm going to give to them to sign up for my newsletter. That's probably a better value investment of time than worrying about selling that other thing that's out there. I don't know, because I still believe that having a direct relationship with your reader is still the best thing an author can do.
Definitely a good point. And I don't know if it's human nature, but like we have these readers and fans that we've gathered, but we're like, no, I want that complete stranger over there. They're the ones I want to read my stuff. I'm going to focus completely on them and ignore my people.
Yeah, it is too bad, because these are the people who are with us and love us, and they want more of us. It's so easy to give of ourselves to them, and we forget about that. Because you're right, Lindsay. We're looking for that other reader over there that we don't have yet. What's wrong? What's wrong with me? How come you're not looking at me? Yeah.
So on, probably on Amazon especially, but on lots of places I hear people saying free is dead, free doesn't work anymore. And I've kind of argued, it's probably less effective on Amazon because a lot of the freebie seekers became KU subscribers and they can get everything there for their $10 a month. But on the other platforms that don't have a subscription service, except for Kobo's, Netherlands,
Kobo Plus in the Netherlands,
Kobo Plus. Are you finding that free is still effective, book one free in a series kind of thing?
It's most effective as a lead gen or a book one in a series. It does work well for example, Sean Costello is an author that I manage, and he's a good friend of mine, and I prefer him to be writing, so I manage his digital assets for him. And Sean's got nothing but standalone novels, but free works on, well, actually it's perma-free on Amazon too. It is the best way for us to get stuff into his world, but not as easy as, hey, here's free book one and you get a exclusive epilogue that doesn't appear in the original book if you sign up for a newsletter, and then I can send you deals and stuff like that. I mean, the newsletter, you usually use that secondary free thing or that exclusive thing to get them. But yeah, when I was at Kobo, we did stats repeatedly, and I can't believe that it's changed all that much since I left, but 50% of people who finish book one in a series will go on to buy one or more books in the rest of the series. The key, and this is the thing I really want retailers to do, and I tried to do this when I was at Kobo and they wouldn't, is people have downloaded free books. I've downloaded tons of free books. I've never even opened them. How do we get people to open the books they've already downloaded and read them? Because if we can get them to read it, 50% of them are going to go on and buy it. So it's not just enough to get them to download the free book. How do we get them to read it? And the retailers have that power. Nook, Apple, Kobo, Amazon know the people who have the books in their library but haven't read them. Why aren't they prompting them to say, hey, Andrea, noticed you haven't bought a book in a while? Because that's how they do it. They go, hey, Andrea, and they have a cigarette. I noticed you haven't bought a book in a while, and I know you like mysteries, and you have this great free mystery, book one in a series. Why don't you give it a read? I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to let you take advantage of what you already have in this wonderful, magical Kindle world of ours. I changed my accent 3 times there. Did you notice?
Yeah, you did, but it's okay because Southern accents are, wait, you didn't do a Southern accent.
I don't know what I did.
I don't know. He was in bed with a cigarette or something. It's his after sex accent.
No, it's going to be my bourbon accent.
I was going to say retailers should have like this little thing where they yoink, pull the book back after a certain time if you haven't read it yet. Like you have.
Yeah, it's like, we're going to take this out of your library because you're not using it. No, I want it now. Oh, that would be brilliant. But again, when I was internal at Kobo, I tried to get the marketing team because they wanted to get people to buy them. Said, if you want to get them to buy, show them the free books they have.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you rated this book 5 stars. Well, here's another book in the same category you have in your, don't buy it, just read it. Right.
See, that's a fantastic idea. Because and my thing is, it's every time I switch a device or something like that, like I usually read on my phone, and I've got a couple of different apps for reading on my phone, and my library changes when I change a phone. And so I don't see some of the books that I have anymore. And it's just in like BookFunnel, you lose the books that you get through BookFunnel. And so I don't remember, necessarily which books I've already downloaded.
Yeah. So let's remind people of the books they already own, because honestly, based on the stats I saw, if we can get people to read it, 50% of them are going to buy. Oh my God. I mean, they actually have to finish it. We also saw it on previews, which I think is important. And you guys know what the previews, but we also saw that 50% of the people who got to the end of a preview hit the buy button at the end of the preview.
Yeah, that's really
powerful.
Good. Yeah, that's good data.
And I can't believe it's different on other, like Kobo's not like a unique retailer that's different than other. It's like, this is consumer behavior. Oh, I'm previewing a book. Oh, this is good. It's compelling. I have to buy it now. That's, that's the way we shop online when you can't pick up the book and flip through it.
Yeah. Okay. So what sort of pricing strategies have you noticed work well on non-Amazon retailers?
I just want to remind people, because people tend to forget that the thing you sign with every single retailer, Amazon, Apple, Nook, Kobo, Google, who knows, but at least the other ones that have been active in the industry, is you cannot have a lower price than any other retailer. So you can't just do a price promo on Kobo or on Apple. Kobo gets around that by offering those 30 or 40% off discounts where you don't have to change the price, because the price doesn't change, so you don't have to change it. The consumer gets a coupon. But so if you drop your price on one retailer, it has to be the same price on other retailers. Now, Amazon is the only retailer that will automatically send bots out and change the price and then come over to your house and kneecap you. They're the only ones who do that very aggressively, which is how we use that to get perma-freeze. Ha, Amazon, I know you only allow 99 cents, but I'm going to go free everywhere and you're going to price match. Ha, ha, ha. So that's important. So I always talk about automatically rounding your prices. I mean, Draft to Digital has an automated tool that rounds to a pretty price in other currencies, and all you have to do is select it, or you can override it. It's up to you. And what I tend to prefer is round your prices to usually a 99 in most currencies. In pounds and in euros, 49 or 99 are acceptable. If you've been through Europe and in the UK, you can see, because the dollar is so much stronger there, that 49 is the equivalent to what we see as 99, because psychology is that we'll always round up in our head. So I think, at least for the English language territories, thinking about the price there. And remember, when you look at your comp audience, consumers don't care if it's indie published or not. And I'm assuming, I have to make the assumption that people listening to this podcast already know that they need to have a on-target professional cover and editing and all that stuff. So it's already indistinguishable from a book from Random House. The only distinguishable factor is the Random House book is a rip-off $15 price, and the indie title is $5. What I saw in Kobo, and what I believe still exists, is there's a happy medium. There's that Goldilocks price somewhere in between there that I think indie authors devalue their work in many, many ways, based on, because they only look at the US and what's selling in the US, and they don't necessarily either walk their price up, like in the case of epic fantasy, where it's longer, or in other genres like romance, where you're probably going to go a little bit lower because people are reading 2 books a day. Whereas with an epic fantasy, they're not they may be voracious, but they may not be able to eat them the way I eat Big Macs, right? Like 6 or 7 a day. I used to. I'm not anymore. I'm healthy now.
Not me. On the same subject, and based on what you said, I think I know what the answer is going to be. But there's a couple of different schools of thought on backlist pricing. Like some people like to leave a series at full price for as long as possible, or just leave it full price always, except for potentially the first one. Others like to have a promotional or a permanent price drop on older books, and then try just to get more people into the funnel for the full series. Right. What would you recommend in that regard?
There was a bookstore in the hometown I grew up in called Bay Used Books, and they had a little stamp they would put on their books, and it said, "A book you've never seen before is a new book," or "A book you've never read before is a new book." Backlist is a legacy publishing industry term. When you traditionally publish, the publisher only cares about your book for the first 6 weeks, and then they don't care about it at all. A backlist means nothing in a world where it's not about shelf space on the store. You know, a book I published in 2004 is frontlist to a person who's never read it. So you could be giving away way too many of your books for free or for little money, whereas somebody reads one of your books and goes, "Oh my God, this Joe is amazing. I got to read all of his books." And they're going to pay whatever. There's authors I buy on site. I don't care. When Michael Connelly releases a book, I'm buying it. You know, so that I don't even look at the price. And that's the thing we forget about, because we're writers, right? We were talking about, I think it was at the Business Masterclass, Andrea, when we had an IP person on the stage, and she said, "You writers are all sounded like a bunch of abused spouses. That you're used to being abused by publishers."
Yeah,
and I would argue that, and we're used to being abused by Amazon. Amazon's the abusive boyfriend that we keep coming back to, but they still love me. They give me money. I'll let them abuse. So we, as authors, as creative people, we belittle ourselves so often, and we forget how good we are because we make up. And am I allowed to swear? Uh-oh.
We'll bleep you out.
We make poo-poo up, and people buy it. And that's magic, but that's what the big name authors do too. So I think sometimes we devalue our stuff by calling it backlist, because backlist is related to windowing and hardcover, trade paperback, mass market, and all the like lower priced items, which is what traditional publishers do. And I think indie authors have an ability to set new standards in the industry. And the standard was the John Locke 99 cent. Let's sell a lot of them. Yeah, I get that. But we have to be sustainable. I think we have to value our content and value the fact that when people discover us, they're going to want to read all our stuff. And that's the funnel. That's the win. And sure, that means you start off with some stuff that may be lower priced as a hook, but bulk discounting all your backlist for the sake of calling it backlist is kind of like, I don't know. I think you're shortchanging yourself. But again, there's no one answer for every author as well. So yes and no.
I do feel that, I tend to think of my backlist as like I finished that series, I moved on to something else, and it's more than a year old. But I
Right.
think the people who find that stuff outside of me running a promo are like my fans of my new stuff. So they're the ones that are going to go buy it. So they're willing to pay their $5 an ebook.
They already know they love your stuff. So like, it's not asking you to take a chance on an unknown. They go, okay, I read Lindsay's new book. It was awesome. Oh my God, she's got all this stuff and she's giving it away. Like Lindsay wants to eat. Lindsay wants to, have shelter and food on the table and martinis.
But not 6 Big Macs a day. So
But no, that's not. Or not Brazilian steakhouse stuff. That's just not.
no, that's good stuff. That's a little pricier than Big Macs.
Yes, it was.
Thank you, Drafted Digital. We appreciate that. So, we talked about hopefully authors are like, hopefully I can get some merchandising love, maybe get some promos. What are the ways that, besides BookBub, because I feel like a lot of people go wide just so they have a better shot at getting a BookBub, because that's like the known way to get books to sell on the other platforms. Are you, I know you don't see this data necessarily, but are you hearing of ways that authors are advertising besides BookBub in order to get those sales on Apple and Kobo and the other sites?
Yeah, I mean, there are the other players like written word media for me has been a very consistent, easier to achieve. I mean, all of the other players tend to be lower bumps, but it's worth trying as many different ones as you can. And sometimes one works for one genre, one works for you, and it doesn't work for your friend in the same genre. I honestly believe that long-term planning and content marketing is going to be your friend. I'll give you an example. Like I self-published One Hand Screaming in 2004, a collection of short stories. I slipped in a few previously unpublished stories. And just having, I don't know how, because it's not like it was a bestseller of any stretch of the imagination. I had a publisher send a photocopy of the printed version of the book to say, we'd like to reprint this in a textbook, and we're going to pay you this much. And I thought that's all I was getting. I didn't realize I was going to get royalties. Every term, I get money from this 1,000-word short story that I could never sell in the first place. And every term, I get money for it over and over and over and over. And I think that in a sense, that was me content marketing, because I self-published the book and I just put it out there. Someone discovered it. Someone discovered that content you put up on your blog, or that free thing, or that Medium article, or whatever, right? It is related to, I remember reading an article on Medium from an author and going, wow, this is a great perspective. And then his byline said he was an author, and I went to his website and ended up buying 2 of his books. I honestly think that long-term content marketing is a thing it's really hard to be patient about, but I've had people contact me and say, oh, I saw a speech that you did 10 years ago. It was a recorded, it was on a Betamax machine or something. And I'd love to, I mean, this isn't related to books. Well, it's related to me talking about the book industry, but would you like to come and talk on this radio program about publishing? So I think content marketing, we forget that we did something 10 years ago and it still can resonate now.
Okay, so is there anything, we've been talking a lot about wide, retailers and everything, and if you're getting bored of the topic, let us know. But is there anything that you particularly love about any of the specific retailers, or anything surprising that you've noticed lately where other retailers are concerned?
Yeah, I think Apple has really upped their game and is being really open. They don't care how you publish. They just want really good content, and they're looking for unique stuff. I know that a lot of the retailers are doing the same. I know that Overdrive is interested in curated content as well. I think I'm really looking forward to what Google is up to, and that's a teaser for your next episode when Lindsay's going to share some of that. But I think it comes back to there's always opportunities, and there's always new customers, and there's always I was talking to an author like Diane Capri, who we all know, and we know she writes the Hunt for Reacher series authorized by Lee Child. And it was a few years ago, and I remember Diane saying, I think I've tapped out the market. And I was like, dude, no one's ever heard of you. I'm not saying that to be insulting, but the average person, and I hand sell her books on planes every time I see someone reading a Lee Child, and I go, so when you finish that book, what are you going to do? You got to wait a year, right? and Mr. Child's not going to release another book. It's like, I know 12 other books that I think you're going to love. There's so many readers who haven't discovered us. We think we've saturated the market. We haven't even come close. So remembering that is critical. Remembering that you're like, I've tapped out Amazon, or I've tapped out this retailer. No, there's always going to be new readers. I have faith that people will continue to read and love reading, and that there will continue to be new readers out there. So not losing sight of the fact that just because a market doesn't have your people yet doesn't mean they're not going to just show up out of the blue. Like Rachel Anflett, the one day, I don't know why, but suddenly my books took off on this platform. That can happen on any platform at any time. And I really hope that we have all the platforms. I hope that they continue to stay in the fight for as long as possible. Please hang around, Nook. Please hang around.
Yeah. You said, okay, so Apple doesn't care how you publish. Are you saying like indie versus traditional, or the type of book you publish, or audio versus?
Oh yeah, thank you. Apple cares about good content. They don't care if it's traditionally published or indie published. They also don't care if you're publishing direct or you're publishing through a third-party aggregator. So one of the things that I'm looking at experimenting with them as a draft to digital guy is, hey, can we just help authors no matter how they're published? Because if we can help authors sell, then everyone wins, even if it doesn't mean money to my bottom line, right? So that's something that's kind of important, and I'd love to see more collaborations like that, because I think the overall industry, it's that rising tide and all boats and stuff like that. Am I going to help you only because I get something from it, or am I going to help you because if we can help get more people reading more great stuff, it's going to feed itself, and I wish there were ways I could continue to force our industry to do more of that, and not just care about great content and think about the reader and how we can serve the reader best, no matter how the book gets into the system. That's critical to me anyways. That's one of my many biases.
Well, that's a good one. So one of the many big draws of ebook distribution sites like Drafted Digital or Smashwords is that you gain access to a large assortment of smaller retailers. Like there's ones that we've discussed, but then there's a bunch of other ones that you sort of don't even realize you're a part of until you set up your universal book link and you see that there's a bunch of like, oh, I don't know what BOL is. Oh, interesting. So I guess sort of to continue on to my earlier one about the heavy hitters, but like, you often are given the option to opt out of some of these. Is there ever a reason to opt out of a smaller retailer or a foreign retailer?
Yeah, you may believe so. I mean, I've seen examples where authors have opted out of Kobo Plus because they believe that they could probably sell more a la carte than they made off the subscription. But again, it's the author's own belief of what's going to work or what's going to not, and it's experimentation. I haven't yet seen. I think we did turn off at Draft to Digital. We turned off a particular. Can't remember what it was, to be quite honest, because I'm old now and I forget things. But we did turn off a retailer because we did not see. We saw that it was causing more pain than it was helping authors. But again, it's completely your choice. And I still have books published through all kinds of different ways. It's like, this book is coming to this platform. I've got weird check boxes and stuff like that. So I think that's an important factor. But the other thing too is, just because I've seen people remove stuff from platforms. Well, I've never sold anything there, so I'm going to remove it. Well, I can guarantee you're never going to sell anything there. Why would you? Like, you're going to remove it out of spite. Great, more room for me as an author. Knock yourself out, kid. So I think I've seen authors make that angry non-business decisions because they're like, oh, well, they never sell anything, I'm taking it down. If you're not going exclusive to Amazon, why would you do that? Unless you found out that there was something really weird about the retailer's not paying you or something like that. Why would you not make it available? Because I'm in Canada, I own a Kobo, and most of my ebooks I buy and read are from Kobo. So if you have a book out and I hear about it, I go to Kobo and I search for it, and if I don't see it, I'm gone. I go on to the next thing, squirrel, shiny object. So there are other retailers in other places in other parts of the world that if they hear about your book, they just go to where they're going to get it. And if they can't get it, you move, and you never know that you've lost that customer. And that's part of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But and that's the, that's the, what is going on behind the doors. We never know those things. But I would rather, I'm not a big enough name that people are going to go, I can only buy it on this platform, I'm going to go get a Mark Leslie book. It's not going to happen. I'm not Stephen King. They'll do it for King. They'll do it for J.K. Rowling. They're not going to do it for me. So I want to be where they're looking. And whether it's a library, whether it's some subscription service, whether it's a la carte sales, I want to just be available so I can, so I can afford to, I get that extra sale because I need them all. I'm still a 5-figure author.
But for people listening that want to be on the show that are 5-figure authors, if you happen to work at one of the distributors or major bookstores and have a title like business director for authors, that gets you in a lot of doors.
And thank you guys for making an exception in my case.
All right. Well, we enjoy having you, Mark. And just we kind of wanted to wrap up with some audiobook questions. We've been kind of talking ebooks, and I know Draft to Digital is now working with Findaway Voices.
Yeah.
And I actually thought of Findaway as a distributor already. So could you explain, because I have like a series with them and I'm going to do another series with them.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing that's what are you guys doing?
Okay, so I mean, one of the key ways that Draft to Digital likes to look at things is what can we do to save an author time and energy so that we can help them go back to writing more books? Because because we only make money when authors sell books, right? That's how we make our money. So if we help them write more books, then maybe we make more money. So with Draft to Digital and Findaway Voices is very author centric. We love them. They're almost like brothers or sisters or cousins or something. They have the same DNA. And so when you are in Draft to Digital and you click on the, yes, I'd like to make an audiobook, we'll punch your metadata over to save you having to set it up again. Yes, you're going to have to add a narrator and the square cover, which is different than the rectangular cover for an ebook. But we'll save you the $49 setup fee, which you would get to find a narrator. And the reason Findaway has a narrator fee as opposed to ACX, which doesn't, is ACX is self-serve, right? You put up an RFP and hundreds of people can send you stuff, regardless of whether or not they're qualified or appropriate. With Findaway Voices, you actually get a project manager assigned to you, and they manually go through and they try to pick the 5 to 10 of the best voices based on what you fill out as this is what I'm looking for, so that you can just focus on those. My very first ACX project, it was like, oh my God, I had 300 plus people. And I was like, well, these are the 20 I like. Like it was that sort of analysis paralysis. I had too much choice. At least with Findaway Voices, they narrow it down to, I was like, well, of these 6 voices, I like these 3. So I'm going to check with my fans to see what they like. And so I like that process. So we save the time of the setup fee. And if you're just doing your own, because you can upload your own audio if you've got it, they have guidance to help you with it. I've done both professional recordings with Findaway and where I've paid a professional narrator, and then I've done mine, specifically my nonfiction or really, really short fiction. And that's the other benefit of Findaway Voices as opposed to Audible. Audible, it's got to be at least $15 or it's not worth wasting your credit on. I've made the majority of my money from Findaway selling, I call digital chapbooks, or 10 to 15 to 20,000 word short books, usually short story collections. And I'm making micropayments on the cost per checkout method through places like Hoopla and HiBooks and Biblioteca and Overdrive and the other sort of more retailerish, retail library-ish or subscription-based platforms, as opposed to through Google Play and Apple and Audible and Kobo and places like that. And that's where I've made, because again, if I do it's 10,000 words for an hour, and I have a 12,000 word book, even if the narrator charges me $200 an hour, that's relatively affordable to have yet another audiobook property out there. Which again, when you go to my Audible page, because since we always talk about the world's biggest bookstore, you see I have a number of titles. Only one of them cost me a ridiculous amount of money. All the other ones are paid off because I made my money back. I didn't make my money back on the 3,000 plus that I spent on the very first audiobook I did, Evasion, but I've made all my money back on all the other ones. And so what I'm doing strategically, I know you haven't asked, but I'm going to tell you, What I'm doing is I'm taking those small books and I'm making more small books, because what I can do is I can then remix them into a unique book, because I'm buying all the rights. I'm not doing any payment splitting or rights sharing. I'm paying the narrators up front, so I can actually do that.
I'm astounded at your ability to see the future, Mark, because you just answered my next question.
I have a crystal ball here. You see, this is it.
It's I was gonna say it's one of the skulls behind
it's
you.
It's one
guys.
of the skulls. That's right.
So my question was, what role does audio play in your business? And if you want to add to that, then.
Yeah, I mean, audio is so intimate. And what I've even done is I paid professional narrators early on. So Active Reader was the first book I did with Findaway Voices, and paid for itself right away. And Nick was my narrator, and I've hired him for at least one more project. I'm losing track now, because I can go and update it like an ebook. And I was talking to Will at Findaway Voices. He's the head of Findaway Voices. People like to hear I always do author's notes in my short fiction. People like to hear it in the author's voice. And I had Nick do it. And I just hired CC Humphreys, who's an actor, a stage actor. He's been on, television's The Fall Guy, which I grew up watching Lee Majors. I love that. So Chris is a friend of mine, and I got him to narrate the book. He's got this beautiful, rich British accent, and it just makes my words sound so much better. But I did the author's notes, because when he sent the author's notes, and I was like, it just sounds weird when you're saying I'm not nearly as eloquent as you, Chris. So I did that. And so I'm going back into my previous books where I had the narrator do the about from the author. I'm doing my own. And I've found, at least, and I'm sure you guys encounter this all the time when you talk to people at conferences, is they go, oh my God, I listened to you. It's usually on Joanna Penn's podcast, but I've heard you on so many podcasts. It feels like I know you. I think the intimacy, when you think about audiobooks, the very first sound we ever heard was our mother's heartbeat and our mother's voice. And Andrea, as a recent mother, your children, right? That there's music, there's magic in that. Audio is powerful. And when we speak our stories, when we share our stories, we connect with people in an intimate way that is beyond the page. And I know some people don't like listening to audiobooks because they prefer the voice that they have in their head. But I love audiobooks, and I love listening to it. And I loved being read to when I was a kid. And I love sitting around a campfire and having an amazing storyteller. I love when I go to conferences and we're all sitting around and people are sharing stories. There's a magic that happens there. So I think we're at the cusp of the beginning of audio. I've been doing some amazing stuff with Voice Map. In my recent episode of my podcast, not to plug it, but I did an interview with someone from Voice Map where you go on audio ghost walking tours where I'm the narrator and I'm guiding you through the streets and I'm telling you about some ghost stories. I can't wait to use it for fiction. I think there's so many amazing opportunities to script. I have a voice double now. I can now, I have a bit of a cold. It would have been really cool if I could just type my answers in and the voice double would have come up and it actually sounds somewhat like me.
You were getting a little emotional there. I almost expected you wipe some tears.
You didn't see the tears? Because there were definitely tears.
Okay, so actually that was very moving. And honestly, I'm not being facetious or anything like that. It just makes me really excited to be getting involved in audio. So how can authors increase their platform where audio is concerned?
I think it comes back to the way authors experimented with audiobooks or with ebooks. Go back and look at what you can do. Okay, I can't afford to do a full 80,000 page novel because it's going to cost me $4,000. Do you have a short story? Try it out. Check it out. Test it out. It's going to cost you a couple $100. Go and look at Findaway Voices and Wesley. There's videos and tutorials on how to do it yourself if you're willing to try and do it yourself with the right equipment. And it's not all that expensive. I think experiment is the key. Be willing to try it and be willing to say, hey, I'm willing, just like I'd be willing to throw a few $100s at this ad, I'm going to throw a few $100s and try out this just to see what it's like, just so you can be part of it. And maybe you don't make your money back on it, but at least you learn something. The same way that authors have been so amazing and so forward thinking and trying new ways of exploiting the ebook, I think we can exploit audiobooks in the same way.
I definitely agree. And one of the things that I noticed, well, as soon as I jumped on Findaway Voices as soon as I could, and one of the game changer aspects of it was that you could set your own price, as
Oh
opposed
my
to just
God,
having
yeah.
one assigned. So, like, well, just generally speaking, like, what value does that have to you as an author?
Oh, are you kidding me? Like, this, the reason we're indie authors is we want control. We want to control our covers. We want to control our blurbs. We want to control everything. And you can't with audiobooks if you're exclusive to ACX, because that's the one platform, or one of the few platforms you can't. So I'll give you an example of what I did with AI voice last year. I did the 7 Ps of publishing success. I released the book. I narrated the book myself, which took a long time, because it's a short book, but it still took me a long, because I'm not a pro. I'm a professional writer, not a professional narrator. And so what I did is, that book is available for $6.99, because it's me. But then I used Jim Kukral had this sort of voice synth company. I forget what it was called. And it cost me very little money to have Brian, a British male, do a version of the voice. And because the cost to do that was so little, and it's a computer synth voice, and you can tell if you're really listening that it's computer synth, I released a 99-cent version of that book. Now, it's only available through Authors Direct through my website, because no retailer yet accepts AI voice. But now, if somebody wants the audio content and they don't care to have Mark's little giggle, or Mark's little intonation, or Mark's little change of voice when he gets passionate and wants to cry when he starts talking about audio, they can have me for $6.99, but they can have a more eloquent Brian, a British male who's somewhat synthesized and somewhat not quite human, for 99 cents. So if they only care about the content, they can have it. Imagine in the future that you could buy an audiobook and have a choice of 50 different narrators. You know, I'd like to hear a drunk guy in an Irish tavern read this book to me. Like, the possibility is coming. And I think as indie authors, we owe it to ourselves to be willing to see how we can leverage that, rather than the way traditional publishers have buried their heads in the sand and said, nah, it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I can envision, like, when you play a game and you pick the avatar that you want to experience the world for, you can just be like, I want the British or the Irish drunk guy to read this story to me.
I did not mean to be stereotypical, because I'm part Irish.
Well, David Gaughran is the only Irish guy I know well, and
he's always
he
sober.
likes his beer.
Yes.
He's always sober when I meet him, but he's put in it somewhere. We'll have to get David on the show.
That's right.
He's super informative and hilarious. And there's my dog in
And
the
he has
background telling us to wrap up.
Smashing beard too, doesn't he?
He does. He has an excellent beard. So my last question is, podcasting, you as a podcaster yourself, it seems to lend itself really well if you have nonfiction and courses and things, because you are establishing that relationship and talking about the stuff that you're probably talking about in your books.
Right.
Is there a point for an author to start of fiction to start a podcast? Mm-hmm. Or would they be better off doing kind of some of the things you were talking about, maybe podcasting some of their first chapters of their book, or short stories with their work?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's a freebie saying, hey, as the author, do you want to hear my author's notes? I'll just read them to you and sign up for my newsletter, right? You can do things like that. I love what Joanna Penn's doing with Books and Travel, because she's not just doing it as a way to sell books. She's doing it as a whole experience of people like her who love this. And it will eventually, that content, well, it's 10 years down the road, will sell her books. So getting into podcasts with the thought that I'm going to do a podcast and everyone's going to buy my books, I wouldn't get into podcasting for that. I would get into podcasting for the same reason that you guys are in podcasting. You guys are passionate about learning. You're passionate about talking with other people. You're passionate about sharing your expertise and talking to people about it. And in my mind, the authenticity of that experience lends itself to a more credibility, rather than, hi, I'm Mark and I want you to buy my book and this is why I'm reading the book. I mean, I did a free Friday Frights thing for almost a full year, where every Friday I did a reading of one of my stories for free. And then I did nonfiction. So I alternated, because I had true ghost stories where, instead of reading, because the audio rights are held by the publisher and I don't actually have them, but I could talk about the research I did for the story, for that chapter in the book. So I was kind of getting around the IP I'd already stupidly given away. And so that didn't work for me. Maybe it'll work because I still have almost a year of content, of weekly content. So But it might work for somebody else. I did get a few people that loved it, but in my mind, not enough to make it worth the time and energy I put into it. So I stopped doing that. I'd rather put more energy into my podcast, because my podcast listeners are interacting with me, and they're giving me feedback, and we have a relationship, and I feel like I owe them more because of the stuff they're feeding back to me, and they're asking really good questions that are helping me come up with better content. So that was a relationship that worked out really, really well. I don't think it leads to money or selling. I think it leads to relationship building, which in my mind is far more valuable than cash.
That's a really good point. Okay, so we are going to wrap things up here. I do have a couple of questions because we did mention we would talk about it. What are some of the basics of distributing with Draft to Digital that authors need to know?
Okay. The choice is always yours. You can choose. It's opt-in only, and you decide to opt in. Yes, when we launched Hoopla recently, when you log in for the first time, you say, hey, we've got Hoopla. Do you want to opt all your books in? Or do you want to do it manually? Again, to try and save you time. Price control, price scheduling. You can actually schedule your price in advance. Assetless pre-orders, right? So you don't have to worry about the wrong version getting. Not all retailers accept assetless pre-orders, but that's a value. And every single book that you publish to Draft to Digital is automatically given a books to read universal book link. And you don't need to use Draft to Digital to use universal book links. I have a books to read universal book link for every single one of my traditionally published books. So when I'm on the radio, I can say, yeah, go to bookstoread.com/hauntedhamilton or Haunted Hospitals or Evasion, like for one of my self-published titles. And the other powerful tool that I'm really looking forward to leveraging is we launched reading lists this last year. And reading lists so I spent not all my time, spent a lot of time begging with Apple and Kobo and Overdrive. Please feature these authors. I love them. They're so great. These are good books. Please feature them, because someone who's merchandising at your retailer is going to build a custom page, and it's going to look pretty, and it's going to be right up front and center. We all want that. Reading lists allows you to have that. Allows you to have control of the landing page. I did for Halloween. I was goofing around, I think, in a hotel room. I think when I was in Vegas, when you and I were there, Andrea, for the masterclass, and I created booze to read for Halloween, and I did it because I was chatting with some authors in a group and said, "Oh, you guys have some Halloween books? I'll put them in here and I'll feature it." And what I could have done is I could have then done my BookBub ad to advertise all of these friends of mine. And I saw there was a bunch of great authors. Julie Strauss is a good friend of mine, and she's a group of a number of writers who are doing Ticket to True Love, and they're all writing stories in the same town, and they're all self-publishing it themselves under the same brand, and they're using that as a central landing page, because that landing page then has links to all their other books. And they're not relying on Apple or Kobo or Amazon to merchandise. They're merchandising themselves. And I'm curious to see, the more power we give authors, the better off the industry can be, because the minute you open it up and say, do good stuff and the readers will come, the more power we give authors to get in front of readers without having to wait for someone to approve their thing, the more opportunity is, right? The slush pile moved from Ren House's back room to an online catalog near you, and the good content prevailed. So I think there's more opportunities there in tools like reading lists, and that gives the author complete control. And the crap will be the crap, and the good stuff will float to the top. And what can we do to monitor customer behavior to show the stuff that's lifting itself up?
Yeah, and just a quick note about books to read. I use them even for my books that are in Kindle Unlimited, because they won't always be there, and I want my readers to be used to either going through books to read, or have, since they've set it possibly to lead to the retailer that they want, it'll automatically go there anyway, and then it just saves me so much time, updating links and things like that on my website.
It'll automatically go to the right geo. So if they're in the UK, it'll take them to Amazon UK if you're exclusive, or .com, or the really crappy .ca one we have up here that nobody buys from.
Which they'll probably force you to buy from eventually, like they did with UK.
I know. I hate doing that. I like buying from Amazon.com.
Okay, so you've kind of already answered this a little bit, but let's see. What are some of the best features Drafted Digital offers authors? I mean, the ones that you use the most.
Free book conversion, automatic end matter, like automatic teasers for your next book. You could do an automatic copyright page if you don't want to do it yourself. I prefer to be in control myself, so there's some I don't use. But what I've long done is I long took the very first other books by the author from Drafted Digital. I exported it, put it into a manual one and it's all universal book links. But again, I'm really anal and I do some stuff. But what I love about it is you can just select this. The templates as well. You can use the templates. There's all kinds of templates that, because authors want to have the little drop thingies and little if it's a mystery or they want the Raven. If it's a darker story, that's a really great opportunity. You've got, D2D print is coming. It's in beta. We went back to the drawing board based on our beta readers and said, not good enough. Let's go back and make this better for the people who've tried it, because they've given us feedback and we don't want to release it to the general public until they're satisfied. And I think if you are a Drafted Digital author and you like something or want more of something, the best thing you can do is email support@drafteddigital.com and ask us. Dan and Kevin and I are out there and we're looking and we're talking to authors and we're bringing back feedback. But to be quite honest, Tara, who is in one of our Ask Us Anythings that we do every month, and there's going to be another one this week. There's one every month. She was with us one time. She collects that information and we sit down. Tomorrow we're actually having a business strategy plan on what's next, because there's only so many developers, and it's based on what we bring back from conferences, but it's based on the author experiences that our customer care team selects. We're actually listening, and to be quite honest, all the retailers and all the platforms are listening or should be listening, because we only make money and we only do well if we do well by the authors that we serve.
Okay, so I've never heard this before. You mentioned teasers, automatic teasers for your next book.
Not next book. Sorry, for the next book to read, like an other book that's already published. You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen that. No, how do they pick what teasers to put in?
No, you pick it as an author, but sorry. So you can say, I want the teaser, and then there's a drop down that says this book. So at the end of at the end of one of my short story collections, I may go to a longer book of short stories, or I may go to, for one of them I may go to the full length book in that series. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes definite sense. Okay, so you mentioned emailing Drafted Digital. My last question deals with getting merchandising opportunities through Drafted Digital. Is it ever appropriate for authors to email Drafted Digital, and if not, how do authors get their attention?
It's going to be built into the promotions tab that exists right now, where you control promotional prices. Right now, it's very manual. It's Dan and I. And when we create a promo for, right now, primarily we're getting them for Apple Overdrive and Kobo. And we usually, what I do is I created the one for Kobo last week, because I got Kobo merchandiser said, hey, we're looking for stuff in this category. So I build a Wufoo form, like a manual form, and then I give it to Cusker and say, if anyone's emailing looking for Kobo promos, give this to them. And then Dan will email a bunch of people. And Dan and I are now starting to collect a master list where you say, these are the people who are publishing to these platforms. These are their genres. So if we see anything, we just go tick, 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 send them off. Now, that's going to be automated soon. That's going to be automated sometime in 2020 if I have my way. Where you don't need to wait for us to do that. You log in and if you say, tell me about promos, when a promo comes up, you get an automatic notification. Say, hey, Andrea, you're writing this genre. We got a promo on Apple. We notice you're publishing to Apple. Do you want in? Click, done. As opposed to fill this stuff out, which drives me nuts.
Yeah. That's really good to know. I didn't know that at all about it. So listeners,
I should have told you, shouldn't I?
Yes. Listeners, go to a conference, meet Mark.
Email support@drafteddigital.com and say, please let me know. Here's what I have. Here's who it appeals to. I even have a form for pre-orders. I just tell customers, you got a pre-order up? Let us know about your pre-orders, because I'm building sales docs to try and sell your stuff to these retailers, in advance. So I promise we want to do everything we can to get your stuff in front of the right people at the right time. Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, you're fine. No, this is why I love the other retailers, though, is they actually like the authors. Nobody from Amazon is listening, so we don't have to worry about that.
For now, Alexa's listening.
Lindsay, you have one last comment, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, for those introverts that we were talking about earlier that don't want to do networking with the representatives from all the retailers, what I'm hearing here is all you have to do is network with Draft to Digital if you're not direct. So
yeah, and if we find good content, all we're really trying to do is help the retailers find really good stuff that we think is going to help them make more money. And it doesn't mean you have to hang out with me at a bar somewhere. It just means you've written a really great book and you're at least willing to email and let us know about it, or to make that little extra effort rather than just pushing the publish button.
Okay, sorry, I was just answering Lindsay there, so my typing probably went through. Okay, so where can people learn more about you, and is there anything you'd like to plug?
So you can find out all about Mark at markleslie.ca. That's markleslie.ca. You can, of course, learn more about the awesomeness that is Draft to Digital at drafttodigital.com, and that's draft, the numeral 2, digital.com. And there's a blog, and Kevin Tumlinson has done an amazing job of curating some content. The videos he has done, I mean, come on, Kevin's voice, come on. Once you have that, you're rocking. Some great walkthroughs and tutorials of free tools we've had forever. Even the free conversion tool. You go to Draft Digital and just convert your book for free. You don't even need to publish through D2D. Heck, I was doing it when I was at Kobo. So that's where you can find out, I think, more about me and more about Draft to Digital.
FYI, Kevin can do that after cigarette bedroom voice that you were doing earlier very well.
Awesome. Well, that's about it for this show. Just to mention one last time, by the time this show airs, there will be 4 or 5 days left to get the storybundle.com/nanobook that Mark is taking place in, and me too. But I'm pimping Mark too, so it's not just about me.
I'm pimping you, Andrea.
Okay, we'll just pimp each other. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. Please visit sixfigureauthors.com with the number 6 for the episode show notes, and to leave a comment or to ask a question for a future show. And as an FYI, our next episode is going to be a recap of Lindsay's thoughts on the 20 Books to 50K conference, plus a Q&A. And this is our first official Q&A. We might only have like 4 questions to answer, but if you have questions, go ahead and head over to our website, click on the questions tab and send it in. You can also join our Facebook group and ask there, and that is Six Figure Authors on Facebook. So come join our group. We've got a couple questions set up where you have to actually be listening to our show to be able to join. Hint, the answer is Joe has the best beard.
For those that don't watch the audio and wouldn't know.
He really does. I can't keep my eyes off your beard, Joe.
Thank you.
I have beard jealousy.
Well, you have a goatee, not a full beard. So
that's true.
Anyway, okay, so please go over to iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast. Isn't Overcast one of them? Pocket Casts, all of these places where you listen to podcasts, and give us a review. And we would appreciate a 5-star review because you like us and listen every week. So don't leave 1-star reviews.
If they got this far, let's hope we're like an hour and 20 minutes into it. Poor Mark's voice is dying over there. Let's hope they're enjoying it.
Exactly. And all right, so we will talk to everyone later. Bye.
So long, everybody.